Delighted to be here with Andy and Dom from Physiquipe, and I love it every time I pronounce it right.
Yeah.
Which is a rare thing, right? Yeah. So I'm chuffed every time I do so. This has been a long time coming because we've been scheming behind the scenes, and it's pretty cool to be announcing some of the stuff we've got planned. Before we get stuck into the stuff we're going to do together, tell me a little bit about each of you, what your roles are and what the business is doing.
So I'm the founder and director at Physiquipe. We've been going for nearly 14 years now, which is hard to believe. And I'd worked previously in the industry doing something similar to what we do now. And I'm all about how do we inspire growth, bring people together. Mainly we do that around technology and education, around that tech, so capital equipment. But yeah, I love getting out there, chatting with people like you and really sharing all the positives that are in the industry.
Brilliant. And Dom, what's your role?
Head of business development now, but still have a couple of hats with clinical apps. So helping people understand the kit and how to apply it meaningfully into practice. Mm-hmm. But the head of BD is looking obviously from a strategic perspective how to grow the business. It's in line with what Andy was saying then. And unbelievable, I've been with you for 11 and a half years now, I think it is. So can't get rid of me.
Super. Now, we talk about the kit, the tech, that sort of stuff, right? I know you've had different iterations and stuff, we've spoken about this before, but now it seems more and more obvious that our worlds align because you are very much seen as an MSK tech company, hardware company. Has that always been the case? How has it emerged that way? What are your interests and how does that align?
I think from my side, so when you're starting out, so historically it was MSK that I would work in previously. It was a lot more NHS centric. That was also because that's just where the market was and that people were spending more in that and the kit that we had. And then really when I set the company up, we took some of that product over with us. But you're looking at what product you can get. Like it's not always easy to find reputable manufacturers that you can work with. So there's a bit of toing and froing. So it was just me when we started out. But really what I'm passionate about, my background sports science, is I like the MSK field. So I really love that. So we're always looking at what products we can bring that we can genuinely have an impact with. So when Dom joined us, we were working in all sorts of areas like lymphedema, cancer rehab, as well as some stuff in MSK. And it's just difficult for us to do a really good job for the target audience that we want and also build a scalable business. So I think as they say in all the books, like really trying to narrow your focus, target the market that you're looking to really help. And that's what we've done over the years.
And your background is MSK as well.
Yeah, sports therapy. Yeah.
So that obviously felt great that if the businesses had taken an increasing lymphedema focus, then I imagine you wouldn't have been as close to your bullseye as you might have been.
It was really interesting when I came in because Physiquipe had a clinic at the time, which is where I came in. And I think it was quite unique. That's what drew me to Physiquipe, was because Andy set up this clinic where all the equipment that we're selling, we were using in practice. So it was like, practice what you preach kind of thing, very much. Yeah. And for me to have the opportunity working at the time with the anti-gravity Alter G, the big Primus machine and a couple of other bits, I was like, whoa, this is fresh out of uni and using this kind of stuff. It was amazing. But then like going into lymphedema, cancer rehab, burns, it's really eye-opening because even if it is, yes, it's not MSK, but it is dealing with a lot of soft tissue problems. Yeah. And they're all dealing with same or very, very similar issues, exercise rehab, getting back. So it was quite eye-opening to see different fields, the amount of crossover that was there. I mean, like in a day, I'd go from a cosmetics clinic to an elite sports practice to a burns rehab, and they'd all have similarities in a sense. They've all got a patient they're trying to get back to activity. Yeah. And it was amazing how much I could take from a burns clinic that were dealing with scars and how that can go into elite sport when they're dealing with scar post-surgically.
Sure.
It was really interesting. I think it opened my eyes up, but then I think to actually, like you say, narrow the focus into MSK, sports med. I think for us as a business, I think at the time it was like, what do you guys do? There's a bit of confusion. I think that really specialising in that area, I think has been really good, and it is a passion of mine. It's a passion of everybody that works. We're all quite sporty individuals as well, so it sits nicely.
I think, and it's broken record alert here, especially for the listeners and viewers that have heard me say this many a time, but generally, if you assess someone's functional needs, regardless of what those needs are, and look at scaling their functional ability, then the similarities between someone even in an intensive care unit or a burns unit compared to someone on a sports pitch, that is the unification that comes from rehabilitation and graded exposure, and the use of technologies for that the way in which we integrate our skill set, styles of practice, all the debates that we can have within MSK, of which we do and we should continue to, that unification is consistent. But similarly, it can be confusing if it's too broad. That's like, you always use this example of different lenses, right? We've got to have that fisheye lens to see the big picture, but there's room for a microscope on certain things as well. And knowing when you're behind each of those lenses is important. It's been really cool to watch your evolution over time. Don, we worked with you on some content, particularly we're looking for sane voices in the direction of shockwave, people that weren't using and advocating for shockwave machines to just be glorified massage tools or blasting people for DOMs in bodybuilders. That's sometimes, unfortunately, something that people underestimate, how much of that had proliferated when people could get them into the hands of whoever would buy them off them. Then personal trainers were digging them into people's ITBs. So we were looking for people to sort of speak sense into that, and you were doing so and continue to do so. You then made some content with us, but also said, right, what might, especially under your business development side, what might we do together? And it started to mature the conversations that have led us to now. Tell me a little bit, if you can, because I don't necessarily know the answer to this, is that what it felt that meant that you were like, we should do more together, and why you felt our values were aligned?
Like you say, you've been watching sort of our development. I think the thing was likewise as well. I know COVID was a big shift for us. As that realignment. I know we've had discussions about how COVID was an alignment for you as well with doing things, and I think it's the case with everybody. The work that you guys have been doing with Physio Matters and the educational hub, we've been doing more with the academy and education side of things, and it's like, yeah, we're selling equipment, but it was also like this educational gap. There's a lot of noise out there with various different suppliers, key opinion leaders, all voicing their opinions, thoughts, ideas off of research and whatever else. And it's how do you make sense of what's going on? And then you've got a great platform, good thoughts, challenging, I think, in a way which I know some people can take in different ways. But I think that's what we like to try and do, is just try and constructively challenge, understand what people's challenges are, what their issues may be from a clinical or business perspective. And I think as we spoke more and more, where you're sitting with that transformative of MSK, like how can we elevate things, but really identify the gaps and how can we actually help people, whatever their goal is in their business, whether it's clinical, whether it's a business goal, it's getting patients better, whatever that might be. And I think as the conversations developed, it's like, we were discussing about various different gaps and bits and pieces. That's where the diagnostic ultrasound came up, because there's things that rapidly come to the market and then more questions come up than answers. And it's trying to create a trusted voice in this space that gives. We like to try and be as unbalanced as possible. Of course, we're going to have natural biases towards the equipment that we sell.
Balanced, not unbalanced.
Yeah, sorry, balanced. Sorry, yeah, thank you. Give balanced views, and I think it's having asking uncomfortable questions, I think, as well, and really challenging people's positions on things in a constructive, positive way, because we're all trying to achieve the same thing. We're all trying to get patients better. So I think it's how can we do that?
Yeah, Andy, when the business was in various different iterations, you could easily have gone down a route, and it wouldn't have been to our taste, but equally you could easily have just created and proliferated sales reps that were doorstepping clinics to do the high-tech equivalent of opening a cup to various different things that they were selling on a doorstep. Now, that would be rude to say that all med tech suppliers are like that, but some of them absolutely are. You consciously lent into education support, made that something that people were then not just purchasing a piece of hardware, they were understanding the way in which they could integrate that into their practice, and you were speaking a clinical language to them, even when that might be a loss lead in the early stages. I can't believe that were an accident. So what is it that made you make that call?
I think sometimes there's not always that much science to these things. I want to create something genuinely great. So I want people to love working with us. I want our team to love their job. That's really important to me. And of course, money and profit is really important in that. And I'm a big fan for advocating that for clinicians as well, and how we improve that. But I think really I want to help people, and the way we think we help people is by maybe challenging them on certain things, but also trying to challenge them not in a critical way, but is that actually what they're looking to do, and how do we best do that? It's by understanding some elements of that clinical pathway rather than just any sort of commercial budget, those things. That's definitely an element of it. But we've got to understand the challenges, or at least understand enough to be able to ask good questions to really understand the challenges.
Yeah.
And that's the driver for me. Is I could, I'm sure, make a lot more money by doing different things, but that's really not the driver for me. Money's definitely important, profit's definitely really important, but the main thing is creating something genuinely good that I'm proud of doing.
It's one of the things that's hardest for people to understand, is that what you're selling is really relevant for the ethics of the process of accumulating profit that you're then able to reinvest in the proliferation of quality. And it's challenging for people on that. And I know you've done more work than anyone sort of broadcasting some of the careers and ideas of people that have done that well. One of the areas where we have had parallel tracks is that we've both got a platform in which we've then been offering some influence in the sector. My stuff's always been getting into the clinical weeds and sometimes sort of holding a line on sometimes how we treat frozen shoulders, sometimes it's how we construct a service, right? Yours has been certainly more on your life stories and increasingly on leading the field. You've then been showcasing sort of biographically people's stories, their personal story, how that intersects to their professional story, including, I was on your show a few years ago, and I know you've got a book coming out to a similar effect. That is that whilst they are in a similar space, there has been a difference in style. Certainly, I haven't heard you say boo to a goose much. I'm sort of known for saying boo to a goose. So there's some people that would look on and think that there's an incompatibility there. We know behind the scenes there's a shared value. We're talking a bit about why we feel that this fills gaps. But for those that might be wondering, and also I'll admit, this is me spotting you on the question, it's like I'm interested in that idea. Where do you see that compatibility, or am I over exaggerating the difference?
No, I suppose to talk about my stuff. So every podcast that I do, I love doing it. I feel really privileged, whoever I'm interviewing, and I'll remember little bits and pieces from everything, like from our chat, which is a few years ago now. And I love people that are doing things in the industry, and that's a key component for me, is trying to find people I think are doing interesting and exciting things. And that may come around from, we hadn't really spent much time together when we did the podcast. No. I really enjoyed hearing it. I was aware of your platform, and it's really opened a lot of doors for me. So it's, for one, it's been very helpful from a business perspective. It's really helped with credibility for me and for the company. I think it is interesting for people to get insights into it. And I think I am an optimist. So when I'm chatting to people, I do look for the good in stuff, and I'm always looking for, tell me more about what you've done in terms of this. And some people, a lot, like, I'll give you an example in terms of in football, people will say, oh, I've worked with a lot of good people, and with the reference that they've had worked with bad people. And you might, what I would question on that is the environment right for that? That's one of the things that I've taken away from a lot of this, and I'm always looking for, right, what's the good in that? How do we utilize that? And then with the lead in the field one, so when I'm going there, for one, also for both of them, people are giving up their time to speak to me, which I really value and respect. And also, I think there's good pretty much in what everyone's doing. Everyone who's got a clinic, it's stressful, it's money, it's risk, all of these things. So I'm looking, right, how can we help grow and develop those things? How can I understand it? How can I share, whatever you say, best practices, what this clinic considers best practice, and showcase that to the industry? So that's why I do it, really. And then when I'm the lead in the field one, when I go into different clinics, it's really showcasing what I do pretty much identically to what I would do if the cameras weren't on. Talk to me about this. Why have you done this? What's your team? What's your culture? What's your ethos? So really it is, that's thought, well, why not just record this stuff? Because that is the way that I would do it. And my approach is one of optimism. It's not to say that we wouldn't challenge something that we think was really wrong, but mine is more about that optimistic route. What can we do rather than that shit? And that's just my approach in life in general.
Yeah, I know it's something that's, especially when something is so biographical, telling a story, it's something that, unless you really wanted to fact check them on their own CV, it'd be bizarre to be challenging. Obviously with my stuff, controversial sometimes in that we try to make sure we're critical of ideas and concepts and what people have put out there rather than the actual individuals, but we don't always get that right. But it's just something that I know, looking on, people might think that that's not as compatible as we're describing it to be. But on a business level, when we've been increasingly talking about the companies coming together in partnership, it seemed obvious to me that we're talking such a similar language in elevation of MSK best practice. For us, we had a gaping hole in how we would integrate technologies into that, right? I've been sometimes too strong on saying that there's just so many gimmicks and gadgets and gizmos, and I know why I have that instinct. I know what that's been. I know what that's meant over the years. I know what machines have been placed on people for no good reason. It has bothered me. Now, I know, though, sometimes that's closed me off to some of the ways in which we need to wise up, and I've been slower on the uptake there, and I need to hold my hands up in certain spaces for it. You know, Shockwave's not a bad example, really, whereby it took for... I was slower on the uptake in where it might be appropriate, just because of the fact that it might have been being used and abused. I wasn't as precise, and so what we're thinking of doing and working together on is knowing, you know, we've made those mistakes, and we need to recognise that if indeed something like point of care ultrasound in MSK is what is going to be increasingly what defines best practice assessment, then it's all me sat there with my fingers in my ears saying, yeah, well, I'll get round to it one day, is just not good enough. And when we need, therefore, to work with those that know the technology, the hardware, as well as some of the personnel that are leading the field in that space, it's just one of those things that made me realise, now we need some help round here, and who's doing it well, and we found that to be a perfect match, really.
Yeah, no, just to add on that bit as well, is that I'm pretty dispassionate about every bit of equipment we've ever worked with. I can't say I love ultrasound or shockwave. I can't. Like Dom does. Dom absolutely loves it. But that's it. But and even like my understanding of it is pretty much at a basic level for all of it. But I feel like I do understand people, and I understand the impact it has. How do we help provide great tools for people in there? So that's what drives me for it. Dom's more looking at that, the patient side of things, and how we help that bit. Mine's how do we help people, clinicians and businesses, improve doing what they're doing. And it's definitely a partnership piece, rather than it's like, oh yeah, come and buy this particular bit of equipment because it does X, Y, and Z. It's a further step back from that.
And partnerships are so important. I don't think there's any business on this planet that has got to any level of success without having a partnership in some way, shape or form. Whether it's equipment supply or service supply, whatever it might be, there's always another party that has to support with what you're doing. And I think, like you mentioned then, with like the different equipment, there's so much noise out there, and I think we kind of bury our heads in the sand, I think, a little bit with the commercial influence of this stuff. Like, there's companies, they're selling product with decent margins on them. As a clinician as well, it's like I do have that element of, I want to make sure that people are clinically getting the right technology that fits their practice, which their private practice will help them from a business standpoint as well. So even understanding that has been really important. I think there's so much noise out there, and there's so many different products. I mean, we had the privilege of going to Medica a few years back, first time I went, and it's every man and his dog has got the best version of that technology, and everybody's got the same pitch, everybody's got the same counterpoint against a competitor. And I think after about an hour, I was like, everybody's got the best laser on the market. It's so difficult.
What's interesting, that's one of the reasons why it really piqued my interest in terms of like, yeah, when we were trying to work out, we should do something, but what?
Yeah.
We have a menu, right? People buy adverts on our magazine, and they might want some exposure on a particular event we're doing, and good on them, that's not a problem. But that is a sort of off-shelf item. You guys were interested in working together, but on something that was a bit more had a bit more novelty to it, and that, I really was interested in that, because it was like, right, what would it look like? Let's be a bit more interesting on how we solve that. And especially, I'm not going to give too much away, but a little bit of a teaser is that there are so many open questions about the threshold of which people might, in their career, be smart to start developing something like point of care ultrasound. And it might well be that is not ASAP. It might well be that there is a baseline and anatomical knowledge that comes from something prior that we don't yet know, that isn't wise for them to do that, and it might confuse them. Does it make clinicians too tissue-centric all of a sudden? Or is it that actually it's sensible for them to and could really elevate their abilities? We just don't know those things. And so we're going to go about trying to answer some of those in ways that we would have been exposed as educators and influencers to not really understand what that means for an ROI for a clinic, and what points of bravery it would mean for an investment, and how that looks. we didn't know that, and so you guys are obviously closer to it. And so solving those problems together and taking our community and shared community on a journey with that is one of the things that really excites me.
Well, I was going to say that definitely, and like none of us, I've been doing it 20 years in this industry. You learn stuff all the time. Like we were just chatting with one of our colleagues who's been with us for 10 weeks, and she's teaching us stuff like within that time period. And it's the same with what you've been doing it for a long time. We'll come together and we'll learn a lot from like, right, actually, what could we do? The guy, Chris Myers, Rob Louse at Smug, those guys, they've been doing it for a long time. But I think they're always learning with what they're doing. So the more stuff we can do collaboratively, and albeit your approach is slightly different than your more, say, confrontational or controversial, whatever you might say, but great, there's a place for everyone in terms of what they're doing. And it's not for us, whether it's ultrasound, shockwave, force plates, there's loads of brilliant stuff out there. And it's all of us really should, what our goal is to raise the level of investment in all of it, but for the right people at the right time. And there's loads of scope for maybe not as many as there are shockwaves at Medicus, because there's a lot of those.
Yeah, a lot.
But there's the place for everything. I really believe that everything will find its way if it's done with integrity and done at the right level with it. And again, if it means sometimes you're going to piss people off with certain things, but yeah, I don't really think there's anyone out there that's trying to do a shit job or trying to do something negative.
No, well, provocation for provocation's sake is just something that, of course, is short-lived. And I think that certainly there were times and phases, especially when we were early in the process and podcasting was novel, and it was seen as being sort of controversial as a means of a flash in the pan. We get less of that now because, of course, we're 12 years into it and we're not going anywhere, and people are realising now that there was something in it, and we've got things that we might want to correct the record on, and there's other things that we're like, well, actually we're ahead of things, and yeah, felt a bit uncouth and a bit impolite, but that was partly because of the culture of excessive politeness that was letting some bad practice linger. And so we don't always get it right, but generally speaking, one of the things that's exciting about building these relationships is that you then have to have an element of appropriate sort of macro diplomacy of thinking, right, what is a raising of standards for the industry, rather than it just being according to any one person. It has to be negotiated, and we try to do that as much as we can in public, and that's one of the things that's exciting about these next steps.
And I'd say, like, raising practice, it's like, I think people are doing a flipping good job with whatever that they're doing at the moment, and I think it's trying to get their feedback as well. Like we've said before, we don't know the answers to everything. We're quite fortunate on our side to an extent that on the side of industry, we get to go to places like Medic. We get to have these conversations, not with people in the UK, but around the world, understanding what new technologies might be coming around, how different technologies are being utilised. Let's not go down the AI route. But I think just having that feedback from your market space, or say it's a shared market space, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Having that feedback and identifying where those gaps are, identifying where people's pain points are, whether it's business, clinical, whatever it might be, educational. And we're in a position to be able to go, brilliant, we've had enough feedback there, let's facilitate that for those people. And I think that's a big part of a big passion where I've come in over the past few years is speak to so many people, like, they're in their room and they're head down, they're seeing patient after patient after patient, they very rarely come up for air. Yeah. But when they do come for air, it's like, look, let us know how we can support you and help you in your journey.
We've got to solve these problems, and when those problems are so shared, when it's so similar, it's such a shame when people are so isolated and feeling alone in those moments. And that's what community needs to be. One of your company values is relationships matter. Of course, it's an important relationship and partnership that we're going to be going for, but also the fact that it has the word matter in it suited me. So I think it's a relationship that's bound to
That is why we did it, to be honest.
That's the main reason, I imagine. We're going to have a shared landing page that is imminent, and because I haven't got the actual URL at the tip of my tongue yet, it means that I'm going to just do this and point to wherever he puts the link on this video. I look forward to all the exciting news that we're going to have for our community soon. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on the show, and it seems a perfect way for us to just discuss at least the next 12 months we've got together.
Yeah, excellent.
Thanks, lads. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack. Looking forward to it.
Nice.
Thank you.